Tampa Bay Buccaneers are 3-2 at the top of the NFC South division. When I look at this Bucs team, I think that they can beat anybody. I think they're a team that can give anybody a headache. And this season, out of all the 32 teams that's in the NFL, there really isn't a clear-cut favorite. There isn't a team that stands out, in my opinion. Someone might say, well, the Vikings. Well, the Vikings are still undefeated, but they turned the ball over, and they jumped out on Green Bay a couple weeks ago, and they almost blew that lead. And then in London against the Jets, their offense didn't look too great. The Chiefs, they're undefeated as well, but Patrick Mahomes and that offense has looked average. Bleh. The defense is the story for the Chiefs. They have kept them in the first 5 games this season, giving that offense a chance to make plays when they need to. So the defense for the Kansas City Chiefs is the story. But going back to the Bucs, Baker Mayfield, when they signed him, I didn't really take it too seriously. I think a lot of people wrote off the Buccaneers after Tom Brady left, and then they signed Baker Mayfield, and I didn't take it seriously because when he was in Cleveland, he wasn't a very good pocket passer. He struggled at throwing the ball on time, getting into a rhythm. He needed Nick Chubb to get the running game going, so once the running game was going, he could do bootlegs and play action, and that's when he seemed more comfortable. And then once he left Cleveland, he kind of became a journeyman, as they say. Went to the Panthers, went to the Rams, and since he's been in Tampa, he's been great. He is doing what I criticized him for. He is throwing the ball on time. He looks comfortable in the pocket. He's developed a chemistry with Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. He's shown that he can buy time with his feet, extend plays, while doing that, still being able to deliver the ball while being under pressure. But with all that being said, can he make plays when it matters most? We saw last season in the playoffs when the Buccaneers had the ball with a chance to, I think they needed a touchdown or a field goal to win it. Baker Mayfield threw a pick, and for me, that's still a big criticism that I have of Baker, is that can he come through in the clutch in big time moments when it matters most? Defensively for the Buccaneers, they play aggressive. They like blitzing, bringing 5, bringing 6. They do a very good job of disguising their blitzes, show that they're going to bring 6, drop 2 linebackers in the middle of the field, or instead of bringing 6, they'll bring 5. Someone will drop back into coverage. Some plays where they're not really bringing a whole lot of pressure, I noticed that on film, a linebacker will crash the line of scrimmage and then a defensive end will drop back into coverage. So they like to disguise their defensive formations. It seems like they constantly have someone crashing the line of scrimmage, trying to get to the linebacker. To the linebacker, trying to get to the quarterback and confuse the quarterback. They have very long pass rushers. I watched the games in condensed version, so they just show the plays on NFL Plus. And I watched the Falcons and the Bucs game last Thursday. Someone from Tampa got a sack on Kirk Cousins, and Kurt Herbstreit was breaking down the play, and I think he mentioned how long the Bucs pass rushers are, and they do have some long, lanky pass rushers, and I think that gives them an advantage in getting to the quarterback because they can just extend an arm if they're close enough and disrupt the quarterback's progressions and make him uncomfortable, be strong enough to pull him to the ground. So this Bucs team has what it takes, in my opinion, to make a lot of noise this postseason. Number 2, my team, the Atlanta Falcons, who I am unfortunately a fan of. They are 3-2 on the year, second place in the division. Started off the season rough. People in Atlanta were picking them to win, to beat the Steelers because of who was the quarterback for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Justin Fields or Russell Wilson, didn't really matter. They lost, and people were freaking out about how they lost because Kirk Cousins was constantly lined up in the pistol, and he didn't look very mobile. They didn't really do a whole lot with him. They didn't really run a whole lot of play action. He didn't really line up under center, and that really stifled Atlanta's offense. Kirk not being able to move as well as he wanted to. So the story was, oh, Kirk is hurt. Did they not tell us anything? What's going on with him? Blah, blah, blah. And then week 2, they got a big win up in Philly. I was saying that even though things look bad right now, I still think that they have a shot of beating Philly because their defensive front, it didn't look good against Green Bay. I thought that Atlanta would do a good job of running the football and being able to dominate them at the line of scrimmage. And they beat Philly by coming in clutch. Last drive, Kirk drives them down the field, gets a touchdown, and then Jesse Bates picks off Jalen Hurts on Philly's final drive. And all of that was because Philly chose not to run it and tried to milk the clock. Instead, they did a play action, tried to get it to Saquon Barkley. He dropped the pass, and that gave Atlanta some life to win the game, which they did. Against the Saints shot themselves in the foot. They had a chance to put Atlanta away, and they failed to do so. Atlanta capitalized with a game-winning kick from Younghoe Koo. And then last Thursday, they win in overtime on a game-winning touchdown drive to Cordell Hodge. So Atlanta, even though they haven't really looked impressive on offense, I think this team is still trying to figure things out. They're getting into the red zone, but they're not scoring touchdowns. They're coming away with field goals. Even though this offense finally looked like what a lot of people expected them to look like on Thursday. Can they do it again? But they're winning these games by being clutch, and that's something Atlanta is not known for doing. Those 3 games that they have won, in the past they would have lost. Okay? Teams keeping them in the game, not being able to put them away, they still choke and don't take advantage of the opportunity. Kirk Cousins, week by week, is looking more and more healthy. I guess that Achilles is not bothering him as much, and he has to step up. Kirk Cousins has to step up. Kirk Cousins has done more in his career than Baker has, and this is probably his final chance at winning a title and proving people wrong that he can win on the big stage. He'll look pretty at times during the regular season. He can put up numbers and make some pretty impressive throws, but he has shown even in the first 5 games of this season that he can turn the ball over. When you need him to make a play, he won't deliver. So Kirk Cousins, just like Baker Mayfield, he has to show up. And I'll say that there's more pressure on Kirk to show up because, like I said, he has had more success than Baker. And I think his bank account is a lot better than Baker's. Kyle Pitts finally got involved on Thursday, and that was another major storyline. Where's Kyle Pitts? He wasn't really putting a whole lot of effort into his routes. He wasn't really taking off with acceleration. Whenever he would turn around, he wouldn't really fully turn around with force and speed. He would just kind of half-ass it. Same thing when it came to blocking. So Kyle Pitts finally had that breakout game. Can he do it again? We'll see. Defensively for Atlanta, it's still a bend but don't break defense. You can still run the ball on them, push them around at the line of scrimmage, but when they get into the red zone and when they have to make a play, when their backs are to the wall, that's when they respond. It seems like that's when they get stronger and they keep teams out of the end zone or get a big time turnover. Matthew Judon hasn't really had that huge impact like I hoped he would. There are plays where he half-asses too, and when he wants to play, he actually makes a difference. Number 3, the New Orleans Saints, 2-3 on the year. They started out hot, really hot, looking like gangbusters. They dropped 47 on Carolina, 44 on Dallas. Excuse me. Derek Carr was looking like an MVP. The Super Bowl is in New Orleans, and I was thinking, is this like their motivation? Is this why they're playing so well? Because they want to have the Super Bowl or be the second team in the third team in NFL history to play in a Super Bowl that's based in their hometown. And then they ran into Philly, and they got cooled off. They got cooled off by Philly. They got cooled off by Atlanta. Even though they should have won that game, you can argue that. And then they got cooled off by Kansas City. The thing with New Orleans is that their offensive line struggles, particularly in the running department when it comes to run blocking. Kamara and Jamal Williams, they get some positive yardage, but it seems like they have to fight for those yards. The offensive line, it doesn't do a good enough job of creating running lanes for them to run through. And when you have someone as talented as Kamara, at times it feels as if he has to break tackles and create something out of nothing. I think they need to find a number 1 wide receiver. Chris Olave and Rashid Shaheed, whatever his name is, the speedy wide receiver for New Orleans, who they just use for deep passes. Probably their fastest wide receiver on the team. So they use him for go balls and streaks down the field. They need to find someone who is a number 1 target, who can get open. I think they need a big physical wideout because if you're going to keep taking shots down the field, there's going to be times where the DB is going to be right with the receiver, and you're going to have to find a wide receiver that can jump up and snatch the 50-50 balls. Right now, that's probably the least of their concern because Derek Carr is going to miss multiple weeks due to an oblique injury that he suffered against Kansas City. So I don't know who they're going to find at quarterback. So New Orleans, it's not looking too pretty for them right now. It really isn't. They could very well fall into a pretty big hole over the next few weeks. And last, the Carolina Panthers. The Carolina Panthers are 1-4. They are a mess. They benched Bryce Young early in the season, and that made headlines, and he was getting killed by the media. He's trash, and he's the worst #1 pick of all time, and all this crap. And I made a video talking about that, and I said that it's not all his fault. Look at the team that's around him. I think Andy Dalton should have started from the very beginning, and he should start the whole season, and Bryce should sit behind him and learn from him, work on his craft, study the playbook. And then against the Raiders, they look like a different team. It's like, oh, okay, maybe they're a lot better than I gave them credit for. But in that game, you could tell that there was a huge difference. Andy Dalton's the more experienced quarterback. The offense was in a rhythm. He was in a rhythm. He knew where he wanted to go with the football. They didn't seem out of sync. So it's like, okay, well, is this who the Panthers really are when they have a competent quarterback? Or is this like a Andy Dalton starting, so we got a good quarterback, let's bring the energy. One of those types of games where a team that doesn't look very good has one of those motivational games where they just come out looking different, and then you start to think, oh, they could be a lot better than I thought. And then the next week, they continue to show who they really are, which they did against the Bears. The Panthers are a mess. They're just a mess. They have a lot of work to do, and we'll see what happens with them going forward. So who wins the NFC South? Who do I think wins the NFC South? I think it'll come down to the Falcons and the Buccaneers at the end of the day. On paper, I think the Bucs are the better team. I think they have a better pass rush than Atlanta does, and that's why I'm kind of giving them the nod, because they actually get sacks on the quarterback and get teams off the field, force 3 and outs. But anything can happen. I'm going to go with Tampa on this one. Those are my thoughts. Just want to talk about the NFC South, give my take on it. Please like and subscribe. That is it. I am out.